Hey guys, what is going on? Welcome back to the channel and welcome to a new video. It's been a long time since I haven't posted, so I would like to give you a little update on what's been going on, what's happened, and what my next race is going to be. My next race is going to be UTMB, the full loop, and that is 176 kilometers, so 110 miles with 10,000 meters of elevation gain. So basically, what I understood when I was training for my first 100 mile was that kind of training really lacked all the top end and all the threshold efforts. So what I started doing was to include a lot of these into my training to get better on the marathon distance. My thought process was also influenced by what David Roche is doing in the ultra space, if you follow that. If I can get faster on the marathon distance, that will translate to trail and ultra by making basically my super top end higher, making me more accustomed to tolerate efforts close to threshold and basically get me more fit. So what happened is I did the Turin Marathon in 2 hours and 49 minutes, and that was basically off of all trail running training. So I only basically trained running uphill. I did a lot of max intensity efforts, like for instance 1 minute on, 1 minute off, or 2 minutes on, 2 minutes off, or I would work with segments. So I would choose 3-4 segments throughout a run, and I would do those segments completely at max intensity. So basically the segment dictated the length of the interval. The threshold sessions, I basically did some super standard 4x8 minutes threshold. And what happened is I went from 2:59 in the marathon to 2:49 in the marathon, doing basically only 2 specific marathon sessions, which were 4 times 5K marathon intensity, 2.5 minutes recovery. And then I did a crazy session, which was 2 times 4 kilometers at marathon pace, 3 kilometers at threshold, 2.5 minutes rest and repeat. So 2 times that. And what happened is I really did feel I was getting a lot fitter. So after the marathon, I decided to apply myself to first goal that I wanted to pursue this year, to get a sub-24 hour 100 mile race with 5,000 meters of elevation. So basically a course similar to Western States. I would really like to do Western States one day, but it's a long-term project, being that it's a lottery. It's 300 people who get in, and every year basically your chances go up. So what I did was, okay, I would like to see where I stack up on a similar course in Italy to see if I can get under 24 hours. So after the marathon, I started training for Tuscany crossing, 100 miles, which is 161 kilometers with 5,000 meters of elevation. And to do this, what I did was basically continue training for marathons, but with a really long run on the weekend. That is the only thing that I changed. Instead of doing, let's call it marathon-specific work on the weekends, I just did very long runs. Very long runs is a stretch because in reality, what I did was apply the same principle of intensity to long runs. So I would do shorter long runs, like for instance, a marathon with 1,000 meters of elevation. That was a long run. Or I did a 60K run, basically all flat with a little bit of elevation, but at a pretty high intensity. So not really marathon effort, but just a bit less than marathon effort. And this was all I did. So basically what I'm trying to communicate with you guys is that all I did was take standard marathon training and just do a very long run on the weekend. And then another thing I did was do an intermediate race, so a training race basically, which was Chianti 120, 120 kilometers with 5,000 meters of elevation. And that was an absolutely insane race. Course was absolutely brutal, super technical, all in the forest, not really a pleasant experience. And on top of that, it rained really a lot, kind of like a nightmare experience. But we got it done, 16 hours or 16 hours 40 something. But I was only there to train and to utilize basically the 8 stations as places where I could get to eat, because the one thought that I had was that I was never going to do what I did to prepare for Istria, which was do the long run alone. I ran a 100K with 3,000 meters of elevation. That is just a recipe for disaster. If you do a race as a training race, in my opinion, it really helps because you are with other people and they're all focused on the same goal, so completing the race. And you have 8 stations. And in my experience, and I'm going to keep on doing this, is to do training races building up to the main race. So Chianti 120 was done 3 weeks before Tuscany crossing 100 miles. That is cutting it fine. Everybody told me, you're crazy, why are you doing this? 120 Ks for a long run for 100 miles is too long. But I thought it would be a cool challenge and I thought it would really help. So basically I did Chianti 120, then I recovered, and then I just went straight into Tuscany crossing. That was an amazing experience. Tuscany crossing was a completely different course. It was super rolling, apart from the last part, which had some long climbs and some very steep climbs, but the rest was all California carpet style trails. So super, super nice, the perfect race for me. Very, very runnable. I ran really a lot and I completed the race in 22 hours and 20 minutes or something, 17 minutes, so under 24 hours. It was very hard. I went out too hard at the beginning and I paid the price for it until kilometer 60. but the rest was really, I think, spot on. Like, I nailed all the preparation, all the lead up into this race. I believe I did a fairly good job. So once I finished that 100-mile goal, I got the news that I got into UTMB. So my next race is going to be UTMB, the full loop, and that is 176 kilometers, so 110 miles with 10,000 meters of elevation gain. This is for sure going to be the hardest race I've ever done. So how I'm preparing for it is taking what I did to prepare for Tuscany crossing, but including a lot more specific work. So let me explain in detail what I'm doing. In the course of a week, I have 4 sessions that I have to do. So I'm keeping 2 intensity sessions. One is intervals, one is threshold. And on the weekend, I'm doing back-to-back long runs on the race course, or as specific to the race course as it can be. So time in the mountains, time on feet, not really worrying about doing any intensity blocks or any like race pace effort blocks, but just doing really long climbs, like 10, 12 kilometer climbs on a course as similar as possible to UTMB. Let me give you an example of a week. The 2 intensity sessions can be done either running or cycling. There is absolutely no difference in my experience on me if I do an intensity session on the run or on the bike. So if I feel that I'm too fatigued or if I feel that I have some problems with my legs, I will do the session on the bike, especially the really hard intervals. The short intervals are always 1 minute on, 1 minute off, 2 minutes on, 2 minutes off, at most 4 minutes on, 2.5 minutes off, 4 times. The threshold session, I will try and do running, and normally I try and do it running uphill. Threshold session is more leaning towards doing continuous effort, so maybe 30 minutes threshold, all done uphill, but it can also be like 2 times 20 minutes threshold. The long runs are done, basically the long climbs are done in high zone 2, maybe sometimes going into the tempo range on the first day. So first day has more intensity, and the second back-to-back long run is a bit lower intensity. So to give you an example, this past weekend, the back-to-back long runs were one 42-kilometer run, doing a course recon from Courmayeur, going up to Col Grand Ferret, which is a part of the UTMB course. So going out is all climbing, basically. There's one descent. It is absolutely amazing. The course is so good. It's way more runnable than I thought. And that was 42K with 2,000 meters of elevation. Then the day after, I did 40K with 2,400 meters of elevation, doing basically the same thing, so doing a course recon. And this time I went from Courmayeur to Col de la Seine, so going uphill wasn't part of the course. So I did uphill the part of the downhill, and then I came down on the race course. And this was very useful to see what that section is like, because it is pretty tricky. It has a couple of pretty tricky descents. So I think preparing specifically for UTMB by going on the race course and being in the mountains, spending a lot of time on feet, I'm not really worried, especially on the second run, of maintaining a pace or something. It's just being outside, being in nature, being in the mountains, and running as much as possible on the race course, basically as specific as possible. And another thing I did to prepare for UTMB is to do a training race. So I did Marathon de Mont Blanc, 90K, very technical ultra in the area of Chamonix. And it was absolutely brutal, 6,300 meters of elevation gain, but all technical. So very, very hard on the legs, and it was a pretty extreme effort. One of the hardest efforts I've ever done. But I was super happy because I really suffered throughout the race. It was really painful. But what changed was that the final descent, which was very similar to Dointanon, which I did last year, exactly basically 1 year and some months ago. The last descent was really long, really steep. Dointanon, and the same in Mont Blanc. The final descent was super, super steep and very technical. But what happened is in Dointanon, I had massive pain in my legs and I could not run it. Fast forward to 1 year and some months later, I really charged the final descent. I was feeling fantastic. My legs felt absolutely great, and I really, really bombed it with no problem whatsoever. So I'm really stoked about that. The final kilometer was amazing, under 5-minute Ks, and I felt really, really good, to be honest. Build for UTMB, I have 1 week left. And then it's going to be basically taper time, because it is on the 29th of August. I'm really daunted by this task. I think it's going to be the hardest race that I've ever done in my life. I think for sure it's going to be the hardest race I've ever done in my life. And main goal is to get to the event, not injured, to enjoy the final training preparation, and of course to complete the loop. What else you can expect from the channel in the coming months is complete breakdowns of all the races I did this year, from the marathon to Chianti to Tuscany crossing 100 miles, because I think I learned really a lot. I've condensed the main things that I learned in this video, but I will make some more in-depth videos about that. If you're thinking of taking on ultras, I think they will be very, very useful, because I started basically 16 months ago with zero background in ultras, and I progressed from 50K, 100K to doing 100 miles. And I believe I can really add value to your preparation, even just by giving you the things that I did wrong. So stay tuned for that. But next up, UTMB. I'm really hyped to have gotten into this race, and I will give it everything I've got to get the best performance that I can on the day. Thanks for watching the video, and I will see you in the next one.